Yeah, what's up, fight fans? Mainman here. Y'all know how I get down. We talking boxing, man. What up to the fam? And what up to everybody in Mainman Mademan's boxing form? Hey, look, man, so the thing is this. I see word on the curb. It looks as if that news is out that Jaron Boots Ennis has now signed a multi-fight promotional extension with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing. So it looks as if that for the foreseeable future, Jaron Boots Ennis is going to be rocking out with Eddie Hearn, and I don't think that's the worst position to be in. We know that Eddie Hearn has a really good working relationship when it comes to him and Turki Al-Sheikh. We know that Turki Al-Sheikh is pretty much can finance majority of the fights that come across his desk with no problem, and so this makes fights easier to make. And that's a good thing. Eddie Hearn's relationship with Turki is key, but also the fact that Eddie Hearn is just, a good salesman. Out of most of the promoters today, most folks would say that Eddie Hearn sells his fighters better than any of them because he's always talking about them. He's always on social media posting about them, and he puts his fighters first. And he actually does his job as an actual promoter by always talking up majority of his fighters. So not to mention he's also politically in position to also reach out and do fights on Jaron Boots Ennis' behalf. He can reach out and do fights with Oscar for the big Virgil Ortiz fight. He can also reach out perhaps to Bob Arum and make certain fights there. Also, he can reach out to PBC, even though hasn't been that easy for Eddie Hearn in the past. I think that, now given PBC's position currently, that Eddie Hearn probably have a much easier chance for reaching out to PBC as well. We've seen also in the past with Eddie Hearn reaching out to, say, Brian Norman Jr. And offering Brian Norman Jr. his highest payday to fight Jaron Boots Ennis. They were deep in negotiations trying to bring that fight across the finish line. Bob Arum and Top Rank wasn't the ones that was going to stand in the way. It was more so Brian Norman's greed to a certain degree, wanting more money, that kind of skunked that situation. But however, that door was still open. You know what I mean? And so that's good, man. So, Jaron Ennis re-signing back with Eddie Hearn shows that Eddie still got some juice to, open some doors for him and can still take him to higher heights. So I think it's a good thing. And, hopefully the relationship works out well with these two. I know a lot of fans may look at it and say, hey, man, what has Eddie done for him since he's been down with him? I mean, we ain't seen much from Jaron Ennis outside of perhaps that Stanionis fight, which once again showing you Eddie Hearn getting the job done with a PBC fighter. But I mean, listen, they just got together, maybe just a little over a year ago. They haven't been down for that long. I think the short time that they've been together, I'm okay with what Eddie Hearn has done. Even with the current fight, that came around as a mandatory, but even so much, what I'm saying, the way that Eddie kind of been navigating with Boots thus far in that short period of time, like I said, I think I'm cool with it. Attempting to do the Brian Norman fight, leaving the door open for Boots if he wanted to do Virgil Ortiz, even if he wanted to do some of the other fights that's been saying Boots' name, like Teofimo Lopez and all of those other guys. I think that Eddie Hearn would have made those fights happen if Boots wanted to do those fights. So at the end of the day, I don't think that Eddie is an obstacle or an impediment at all for Jaron Ennis, and I think it makes perfect sense. Now, so the thing is, man, since Jaron Ennis, as we all know, vacated his titles at 147, moving up to 154, and we want, the fans want to see the big fight, and that's the one between him and Virgil Ortiz, something that fans has been talking up for quite some time. And so everyone wants to know what's the route towards Virgil Ortiz. So we heard in recent times Eddie Hearn coming out stating that for Jaron Ennis, more than likely he's going to look to take a possible couple tune-ups at 154 before he looks to pursue that Virgil Ortiz fight. I think that's okay because, once again, Virgil Ortiz came out before even that, telling the world that he, would perhaps rather go another route first, take a fight first, and then worry about Jaron Ennis. And as we've been covering a lot here on the channel, fight fans, I believe when I listen to Virgil Ortiz say that, all he's basically telling us in a nutshell is he want to sit back and wait and see what happens for his opportunity between possibly him and Sebastian Fundora, where Virgil Ortiz is the WBC interim champion. And so he's probably sent back like, you know what, I want to see if that opportunity is going to bear some fruit. Can he get a shot at his first title shot? and maybe, lure Sebastian Fundora into a fight, maybe also into a mandatory. And if he can get his hands on that title shot, then I think he'll possibly look to pivot the back towards Jaron Ennis. But however, this is good timing, in my opinion, because like I've been stating here on the channel, Jaron Ennis and Virgil Ortiz should happen for a belt. And I would love to see that showdown happen for a belt. That's a really, really big showdown. At least one, if not a unification. I think at least one belt should definitely be in the mix. And so, once again, this leads back into the question, if we're making time for Virgil Ortiz to do what he got to do, then what is this going to leave for Jaron Ennis? Who is these two tune-ups or couple tune-ups, maybe one, maybe two, for Jaron Ennis that he should or should not take, fight fans? Now, we've been talking about this here on the channel once again in recent live streams. And, we've seen recently that since Jaron Ennis has decided to move to 154, look like the WBO is the only sanctioning body thus far that has ranked him. And he enters the 154 as the number 4 position with the WBO. So looking at the company that he keeping in the WBO, it's some pretty damn decent names. We know that these two right here, Xander Zayas and Jorge Perez, is more than likely going to be fighting for that title this weekend. So that's going to take those two off the list. Josh Kelly is available. Last I heard from Josh Kelly, he was attempting to do a fight with Bakram Murtazaliev, the IBF champion, way over here. But however, Bakram has been ordered to face Erickson Lubin next. And so given that situation is playing out and they're in negotiations, it leaves Josh Kelly without a player to fight. So maybe they look at Josh Kelly. I know that Josh Kelly once again had a once upon a time working relationship with Eddie Hearn. I'm not sure if they're still cool or whatnot. But if they are, then that may be a touch for Jaron Ennis. Kelly is a good step-up fight. Kelly has been on a good winning trail as of lately. I think he'll test Jaron Ennis at 154. But I think that he's also very beatable for Boots Ennis as well. If that doesn't have enough star power or maybe name recognition for U.S. fans, maybe a name such as like an Israel Madrimov. Israel Madrimov, whom we know has a common opponent with Virgil Ortiz, and also another fighter that fans once upon a time was talking about for Boots Ennis, and that's Terrence Bud Crawford. So Israel Madrimov for both of them. I think that'd be a real good size up for Jaron Ennis if he was to look towards Israel Madrimov. That's a tricky fight, not an easy fight at all. Virgil had his obstacles to overcome in that fight, so did Bud Crawford. Israel's going to push you and test you, man. If he's coming in cracking on that night, moving and grooving like he likes to do, it's going to be a tough night for Jaron Ennis to have to figure out. Is that too risky of a fight for Boots? Now, we can't keep saying that for Boots neither. The word risky and so on and so forth. A lot of these fights at 154 are tough fights, and they may present a certain level of risk for Jaron Ennis. But if he was to get in there with a Virgil Ortiz or any of these champions that he says he wants, I mean, listen, bro. Listen, he going to have to take some risks. And fighters like Israel Madrimov may seem risky, but hey, it is a good fight for Boots Ennis, and this is not even champion level yet. Even a fight, say, with like a Sergey Boachuk, right? Sergey Boachuk is a very, very tough opponent, right? He fought Virgil Ortiz. That's a common opponent with Virgil Ortiz. And a lot of fans think that Boachuk could have possibly got the nod in that fight. You know what I'm saying? So maybe Boots Ennis want to go up and show him how it's really done. Boachuk is an extremely, extremely risky fight. Remember the beatdown that he put down on Brian Mendoza, fight fans. Very, very, very tough fighter. You know what I'm saying? So, risky fight indeed, but still somebody that's in the rankings and can definitely get Jaron Ennis fully acclimated to 154 pounds. A guy like Boachuk, certified puncher, going to apply that pressure. Really good, maybe tune-up fight for Jaron Ennis. Or maybe people may say, man, I don't know if we consider that a tune-up. That's more of a nightmare, you know what I'm saying? How about Jesus Ramos, another pressure fighter right there in the WBO that can push and press Boots Ennis? A lot of fans like myself want to see Jaron Ennis in there with more pressure fighters to see how he deals with that pressure. And a guy like Jesus Ramos, a 154 puncher, that'd be a really, really good kind of guy to kind of get Jaron Ennis in there to kind of mix it up with to see how he's moving and grooving at 154. Now, of course, Keith Thurman, if he could be lured, Keith Thurman, as we all know and seeing in recent interviews, has been out here looking for a fight. Got a lot of shit to say about Jaron Boots Ennis as well. If y'all want to listen to some of that stuff, just check out the live stream that we did yesterday, fight fans. But Keith Thurman is letting it be known that look, and he want all the smoke with whoever, including Jaron Boots Ennis. So in Eddie Hearn's case, once again, relationship with Turkey Al-Sheikh, if Keith is asking for a certain amount of money, I think they maybe should explore this option. The name recognition on Keith Thurman is very recognizable, and what it would do to Boots' brand and name, especially here in the States, I couldn't think of no better fighter to get. Maybe aside from say like a Manny Pacquiao or something, you know what I'm saying? But it's the aging veteran versus the younger fighter. And this is a very, very good fight. Extremely risky for Jaron Ennis. And Keith still has the magic left inside of his body where he can still possibly beat Boots. That is a very, very high possibility. But once again, the name recognition of Keith Thurman, getting the scalp with Keith Thurman, will propel and put so much momentum behind Jaron Boots Ennis that it may just be worth the amount of money that maybe, say, Keith Thurman would charge him. And given, once again, we see Eddie Hearn doing Stanionis and Jaron Ennis, lets us know that the PBC door is open, fight fans. So I think that is another one, you know what I mean, that they maybe should consider. Now, Keith Thurman is also rated in the WBO, fight fans, as of now, which is a bit shocking given what he said back in the day about their belt. But however, Keith Thurman is rated number 8 right here in the WBO, and Jaron Ennis is number 4. Maybe they should explore this option. So when I run this down, and I'm just currently looking at the WBO because that's just right now where he's only ranked. And these are good enough names for me anyway. You know what I'm saying? If I had to take my pick of order, which way that Boots should go first, second, or third, or whatever the case may be, I would say Madrimov should be considered the first option. That's a really good common opponent. And not to mention American boxing fans, due to the fights with Virgil and Terrence Crawford, recognize who Madrimov is. Also, I would think that number 2 should be Keith Thurman. You know what I'm saying? If he can get Keith Thurman, the name recognition is priceless. But if PBC may have other plans for Keith, given that Keith is calling everybody out and him and Charlo just went back and forth, who knows what that may bear some fruit. But if Keith is busy maybe doing PBC's bidding, then I think that the next best name that I can look at would be maybe a Boachuk, between Boachuk and Ramos, but I would probably say Boachuk because I think that Boachuk just, if Boots can ice Boachuk, that lets me know that he's welcome to the class. You know what I'm saying? Now, truth be told, if he was to beat a Israel Madrimov first, that may propel Jaron Ennis, given that he has a number 4 ranking and Madrimov is top 10. That could possibly propel Jaron Ennis into a mandatory slot up here. Maybe even ahead of Josh Kelly. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? Given he got more political muscle. But the fact is that Jaron Ennis possibly can get propelled towards a mandatory position, but this spot is vacant. And maybe the winner of this said belt has to be immediately go to a mandatory, because that's how it normally works in a lot of vacancy cases like this. Once they win that vacant belt, they have to pivot directly to a mando. And maybe a win for Jaron Ennis over, once again, Israel Madrimov, a top 10 fighter, or a Boachuk, or a Ramos, or a Keith Thurman, you know what I'm saying, could propel him to this mandatory slot and take on the winner of Xander Zayas versus Jorge Garcia Perez. And then if then we have a situation where possibly Virgil is going after Fundora, and then possibly Boots going after young Xander Zayas, who rocks with Top Rank, and that door politically is wide open. And not to mention, that's a smoking ass fight fans. Xander Zayas versus a Jaron Ennis. So that's how I look at this situation, man. This is kind of cool, bro. Like I said, first Israel Madrimov, and if he wants to take another one, we should be looking towards Keith Thurman. If Keith is busy, we should be looking towards Sergey Boachuk, or maybe a Jesus Ramos, and those would be my preferred picks for Jaron Ennis in his so-called soft touches at 154. But once again, still a lot of good things also happening at 154. I am really looking forward to see what's going to happen between Virgil and Sebastian Fundora. I hope Fundora and PBC don't pop back away from this. Given that Virgil is in a interim position, the only way that Fundora can get away from Virgil Ortiz is if perhaps Erickson Lubin, who once again is negotiating with Bakram Murtazaliev, if Erickson Lubin, fight fans, if Erickson Lubin can, beat Murtazaliev, which I got Murtazaliev beating Erickson Lubin, by stoppage, fight fans. I like Lubin. I know he's a slick fighter, but I just think that, you know, he's a bit chinny. He's been through some hard, tough fights, and I think he could just he gets lured into these brawls. And I think that if he get lured into a brawl with Murtazaliev, it's going to be a wrap. But I'm favoring Murtazaliev in this fight. But however, if Lubin can pull this out, then that would then basically give Sebastian Fundora maybe once again an exit route, and he can go towards a unification and maybe try to trump that said mandatory. I hope we don't get there. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather see the Virgil versus Sebastian Fundora fight. I think that Virgil is really got what Sebastian Fundora has been looking for, you know what I'm saying? But Fundora has been looking good in his recent fights. So it's going to be interesting to see how this fight would pan out, man. So interesting matchups at 154 between this one right here, between Lubin and Bakram, and also definitely between of what the hell Keith Thurman is going to do, what the hell is Jamil Charlo going to do. Anybody seen Earl Spence Jr.? I know Earl is looking at all of this, got to be looking at millions just walking out the door, man. But if his health is not right, then there's nothing he can do about that. You know what I'm saying? But there got to be a hurting feeling for Earl Spence Jr., man. Right now at 154, these are the fighters that Earl's supposed to be in the mix with, and it's very unfortunate that he isn't, you know what I mean? And so also the last remaining question of who the soft touches for Boots is going to be before we possibly get that Virgil fight, or will he be pursuing Xander Zayas, given that he's only ranked in the WBO? And that just makes sense, fight fans. So I'll definitely be watching Xander Zayas and seeing if they mention anything about that on tonight's broadcast. Thumbs up on the way out if you didn't hit it on the way in. Share. Rock the bell. It's going to get real interesting for Jaron Ennis. How do y'all think that he does at 54, bro? We've been talking about this for a while now, man. And we know that the smoke was going to be there. You know what I'm saying? And this is without Terrence and Earl being at the clash. You feel me? But there's still a ton of smoke for Jaron Boots Ennis to deal with. And given that he's still rocking out with Eddie and Matchroom, the doors are going to be wide open. How far is Boots going to go? To the next video, fam bam. Peace out.